Okay. So due to video errors, I was in and out. So long story short, after you pull that assembly off, there's a snap ring that sits right there. And what that snap ring does is it keeps this whole assembly from sliding out of place. Now if you don't have a set of snap rings, or if you left them somewhere you can't find them, what I did was I took a cheap Chinese pair of needle nose pliers, took them to the bench grinder, and just basically just kind of made some quick snap ring things. All of these, as you can see, are you spread them. So this worked perfectly. And if I need to use them, I can just grind it down on the inside. So then what happens is this whole assembly, like I said, be very careful when you pull this whole assembly off. See this? Pull it off like this. Keeping everything as a whole. Might need a little persuading. Just be careful, just be gentle. So then if this part right here is hanging up, so what you can do is you can kind of just be careful, don't gouge it. Take snapping pliers and just tap it with a hammer. Not to tapping it, see it'll start to come off like that. And then you can work this whole thing out as one unit hopefully, but it's still gonna take a little bit of persuasion. Just lightly tap. See, everything moves as one unit. You don't have to smack it. Just tap it off light. This comes off like that. Careful. There's a needle bearing right here. Keep that needle bearing with this assembly. Don't lose that needle bearing. You can have fun finding another one. Let's just put it that way. There's two of them, actually. They're all the same between the 0 and 6 transmissions, but just don't lose them. There's generally there's nothing wrong with them. Don't let them fall out. Don't let them get dirty. Because remember, they ride on that shaft. You don't want to gouge that shaft. Okay? There's your top gear. Now, we need to remove the bottom one. This one's relatively pretty easy, but what you need to be very aware of is when you're removing this, you might be able to get away with it, you might not. You have to remove this snap ring. According to the Bentley, you need to remove this snap ring right here. Well, see this shaft? It's not hard to see, but it moves. When you remove this snap ring, this shaft can then move however it pleases. If you push it in, if you bump it in accidentally, you just messed up your whole internals. Because a whole bunch of roller bearings will fall out. And you're pretty much screwed. As far as making your life easy. So we're going to go ahead and remove that snap ring right there. And we're just going to see if we can pull this gear off without having to pull this one off right here. So I've gone ahead and removed that snap ring. This gear should just, sometimes it needs a little coercion. Take a small little screwdriver. And see, you don't need to pull it off. The Bentley says you need to pull it off. You don't need to use a puller. It will come off on its own. You just have to be very gentle. Or you can use some tools, some whatever you have lying around to kind of you just don't want to be forceful with it. See how this shaft spins independently? That controls that. Okay. So just don't keep that in mind. Now I'm doing this, you know, completely half-assed right now. I can get the gear puller if I want. You know, I'm sure make my life a little bit easier, but I'm just going to do this. A couple of flatheads I got lying around. So after you pop that gear off, basically you get it from its happy place. It just slides right off. You didn't need to remove that snap ring. There's no needle bearing to worry about with this one. Everything's happy. Everything's just as it should be. When you remove the fifth gear, from the, or the all fifth I should say, keep all associated snap rings, keep the needle bearings, because in the book you do, like this ring right here, there are different thicknesses that came from the factory. The Bentley details when to use different thicknesses, but mainly because I didn't really care or have access to the thicker snap rings, or a dial meter at the same, or a dial caliper at the same time. I just threw it in and said screw it. There's no noticeable wear, damage, or anything. It just, if there's a certain amount of play, you need to use either a thicker or a thinner snap ring. If you don't plan to drive it that much, I wouldn't even worry about it. And then, for the most part, you just, installation is reversed of removal. Remember, this goes back on like this, because it gets inserted like that. If for some reason you do need to remove that snap ring, you need Volkswagen 203-116. I made a quick video on YouTube detailing how to make it from cheap PVC pipe. I have a lathe now, so if you want, I could always make you one. If you are desperate, you absolutely have to have one, or just go get it from Snap-on and Matco. It's like $30 for the tool. Other than that, it's really simple to do. You just use black RTV to make yourself a gasket. I used blue last time and it didn't leak a drop. Mainly because that's all I had lying around. I didn't want to buy more. That's pretty much about it. Just be careful. Mind your snap rings. Mind your hardware. Don't lose or dirty your needle bearings. And you're good to go.